Welcome back now for the news in detail. We begin from the United States, which has claimed Iran test-fired an Al-Shabaab-3 missile 1,000 kilometers from southern Tehran. The reported launch comes in the wake of strained relations between Tehran and the West. The Pentagon says the missile's range is part of Tehran's efforts to improve its range and accuracy. It says the missile does not pose a threat to shipping or U.S. bases. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he will visit Iran for talks if necessary in order to resolve tensions. Iran has neither confirmed nor denied the testing of its Al-Shabaab missile. Now, Britain has decided to deploy a warship to escort all its vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. A government spokesman says the Royal Navy is tasked with accompanying the British vessels. It said the move is aimed at defending freedom of navigation. Tensions between Iran and the UK intensified after Tehran captured a British oil tanker in response to the seizure of a supertanker near Gibraltar. Britain proposed a European-led mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz, but France says it's unwilling to send extra military assets to the Gulf. Meanwhile, 150 people are missing, feared dead after a wooden boat carrying migrants capsized off the Libyan coast. The head of the UN's refugee agency, Filippo Grandi, says it is worst such tragedy in the Mediterranean this year. The Libyan Navy says more than 300 people were on board, mainly from the African and Arab countries. It says 137 passengers have been rescued. Libya has become a major conduit for African migrants and refugees seeking a better life in Europe. Earlier this week, the Libyan Coast Guard intercepted 70 migrants off the coast, escaping the country. Moving on, the Taliban have captured Kiran va Manjan district in Afghanistan's eastern Badakhshan province. The district police chief Abdul Wali said government forces did not send reinforcements despite repeated calls for days. The district, known for its large semi-precious gem deposits, fell to the Taliban after 4 days of heavy fighting. The district police chief, along with 40 soldiers, fled to Nuristan province while dozens of others surrendered. Kiran va Manjan district shares borders with Nuristan, Panjshir and Takhar provinces. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and President Ashraf Ghani have agreed to accelerate efforts to end the war in Afghanistan. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has assured the Afghan president the United States is committed to a conditions-based troops withdrawal. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Joseph Dunford and Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad are in Kabul to discuss the forces' withdrawal. Violence has recently flared in Kabul, with 2 explosions jolting the capital city. The United States has warned Turkey not to make the Russian-bought S-400 missile system operational. In an interview, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Turkey could face more sanctions if it activates the missiles. This comes after the Turkish military announced a second shipment of the missiles from Moscow after the completion of the first one. The U.S. has kicked Ankara out of the F-35 program over the purchase last week, saying it undermines NATO security. While North Korea says its latest missile launch was a warning to South Korean warmongers to stop joint military drills with the United States. Chairman Kim Jong-un said Pyongyang will not stop developing powerful weapons to guard itself. Kim also warned Seoul against importing weapons from the United States. The U.S.-South Korea Joint Military Command said the missile launch has no effect on their defense posture. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the launches are part of Pyongyang's negotiation tactics. He said working level talks with North Korea could start within a few weeks. Moving on, Turkish government forces have killed 8 Kurdish militants in southeast Hakkari province that borders with Iraq. The foreign ministry said the militants were targeted by Turkish jets in an air-backed operation over the rural areas of the Yüksekova district. Ankara alleged that those killed in the raid were part of the PKK, which Turkey identifies as a terrorist organization. It says the ongoing military raid is a part of domestic security operation. Airstrikes by Syrian and Russian planes have killed 12 people across northwestern Syria by regime and Russian forces. According to war monitors, 7 were killed in Idlib, while 5 lost their lives in neighboring Aleppo province. Meanwhile, the Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar met military officials to discuss a possible offensive east of the Euphrates River in Syria. Earlier, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said Ankara is running out of patience on establishing a safe zone in northern Syria. More than 500 civilians have been killed in the region since late April. Moving on, Palestine has suspended all agreements signed with Israel. President Mahmoud Abbas says Palestine will not bow to Israeli dictatorship and its use of force. This comes after Israel demolished a number of Palestinian houses in occupied East Jerusalem, a move that prompted international criticism. At a Palestine Liberation Organization meeting in the West Bank, Abbas said the move is a response to Israel's violation of signed agreements. He called on to the international community to take a stand on Israeli violations in the Palestinian authorities. Abbas said it is time to implement the reconciliation deal between Hamas and Fatah brokered by Egypt. Ukraine says it's detained a Russian tanker for its alleged involvement in the seizure of 3 Ukrainian ships in November. Moscow says Kiev has released the crew members of the detained vessel. In May, an international maritime tribunal ordered Russia to release 24 Ukrainian sailors and the ships. The court also urged both countries to refrain from taking any provocative action. The European Union has rejected Boris Johnson's Brexit policy, calling it unacceptable after his first speech to the UK Parliament. The new Prime Minister said he is committed to getting rid of the Irish border backstop, which has been a bone of contention in negotiations. The European Union's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, said Johnson's intentions are contrary to the bloc's mandate. Johnson also spoke on the phone with former EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. Juncker restated the EU's position that already negotiated withdrawal agreement is the best one possible. He said the Commission will be available over the coming weeks if the UK wants to hold talks. The UK has until end of October to conclude a withdrawal deal. Moving on, the European Central Bank has warned of inflation in the eurozone due to trade conflicts and doubts over a no-read Brexit.
European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi also pointed to other major risks, including geopolitical tensions. Draghi says the outlook is getting worse for countries where manufacturing is very important.
And the reasons were basically found to be in the general uncertainty that's now been with us for several months, actually more than a year, and which relates, as I said many times, to trade wars, to geopolitical tensions, to now also the possibility of a hard Brexit. Certainly is another factor to take into account.
The central banker says monetary policy can only work up to a point, and governments must step in if the situation worsens.
More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. In Spain, socialist leader Pedro Sanchez has lost a bid to be confirmed as Prime Minister after the failure of coalition talks with far-left parties. Sanchez faces the confidence vote in Parliament after his Socialist Party won most seats in April's elections without winning a majority. This brings Spain a step closer to holding its 4th general elections in as many years. Sanchez now has another 2 months to find ways of getting support, either for a minority or coalition government. Without a deal, Spain would have to go back to the polls in November.
No.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says solidarity between Turkey, Malaysia and Pakistan is necessary for the unity of the Islamic world. More in this report.
At the meeting with Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, Erdogan said Ankara and Kuala Lumpur should strengthen bilateral ties. He said cooperation between the two countries will help free the Muslim world from subjugation. Prime Minister Mahathir said Malaysia and Turkey share the same view on the Palestinian conflict.
I believe that until the reasons for the terrorism are recognized and treated and handled, we will not have any end to the kind of terrorism we are seeing today.
Mahathir is on a 4-day official visit to Turkey.
Moving on, the US federal government will resume capital punishment after a 16-year gap. The 5 death row inmates are convicted of murdering and, in some cases, torturing and raping children and the elderly. This comes after US President Trump called for tougher penalties on violent crimes. No federal prisoner has been put to death in the US since 2003. The government has about 60 inmates on death row, but methods of execution and a controversy over lethal injections is still being debated across the country. The Pentagon has arrested 16 U.S. Marines on alleged human smuggling charges. Investigators say information from prior human smuggling probes helped in the arrests. Local media says the arrested Marines opposed President Donald Trump's border reinforcement force and anti-immigration policies. The International Atomic Energy Agency has appointed Romanian diplomat Colonel Hirota as its interim chief. He will head the UN watchdog until member states agree on a permanent successor to the deceased Director General Yukiya Amano. The United Nations agency has not given any time frame to name its permanent chief. The Director General is appointed by the agency's 35-nation Board of Governors for 4 years. The candidate must be approved by a general conference. A heat wave has swept through London, giving it the second hottest day on record. The hot spell originating from the Mediterranean raised temperatures to 37.7 degrees Celsius in London and its surrounding areas. According to local weather forecasts, the country's heat wave is expected to last for about 3 months until October. It was a new July temperature record for the entire United Kingdom. Many commuters had to travel on sweltering tube lines not equipped with air conditioning. The authorities say the underground rail lines will not get air conditioning until 2030. Londoners have been using air conditioners, fans and freezers to help them endure the heat. Locals and tourists struggle to cope with intense heat in southern Spain. In Belgium, the weather authority issued its first ever code red warning as the country experiences the hottest temperatures on record. Meanwhile, the European Commission's President-elect says the bloc plans to launch a special fund to wean members off the fossil fuels. Ursula von der Leyen revealed the plan during her visit to Poland. Leyen said the EU will create the Just Transition Fund because new technologies being adopted in the region require investment. Meanwhile, the EU has also asked the bloc's top court to take action against Spain and Bulgaria over poor air quality. According to the European Environment Agency, nitrogen dioxide causes about 9,000 premature deaths every year in Spain.
We need to care for our earth we live off, and that we want a healthy and clean planet. And therefore, we have to step up with climate change, which means a lot of innovation.
Moving on, China has successfully launched its first commercial rocket capable of carrying satellites into orbit. The rocket Hyperbola 1 carried 2 satellites into the pre-selected orbit from a facility in the Gobi Desert. The 20-meter-long rocket has maximum diameter of 1.4 meters with a lift-off weight of 31 tons. It reached an altitude of 300 kilometers in orbit. The Hyperbola rocket is designed by private lunar exploration startup iSpace. A German charity, Skate Aid, is trying to bring life back to the war-torn Syrian city of Kutsaya by teaching children to skate. To help, the organization built a skate park in the city a month ago, and now children are hoping to become professional skaters. More in this report.
NGO founder Titus Dittman believes skateboarding can teach children traumatized by years of conflict and violence to stand up to falling. Skate Aid has built several skate parks in war-torn countries, including Iraq and Afghanistan, and Syrian children are overjoyed to have one in their locality.
Yeah, we used to sit on it. We did not know how to stand up on it because we never experienced this before.
The park provides skateboards and other much-needed equipment to children.
I love the kids here. They're so nice. They learn so fast, and they're super kind. Just like giving me gifts and wanting to skateboard. It's amazing. Yeah.
With skateboarding making its Olympic debut in Tokyo in 2020, children of war have a chance to fulfill their dreams.
An all-women biker gang in Russia is planning a 2,000-kilometer journey to the Black Sea. The group's leader, a 55-year-old motorcycle enthusiast, is challenging stereotypes about both age and gender. More in this report.
Sebastiania Samorodok is the retired head of a folk music ensemble and is in her 50s, but she isn't ready to settle down just yet. She spends her free time burning rubber around the Russian countryside with her gang of women bikers. They call themselves the Steel Cobras.
My friends kept asking me, why do you drive alone the whole time, Syava? You should start a women's motor club. I said, I don't know, I will try. And so our club will turn 5 years old this year.
The group's lineup has changed frequently over the years. Only 2 original members, including group leader Sebastiania Samorodok, remain. Later this year, they plan on riding 2,000 kilometers through the Urals to the Black Sea.
I had never even considered riding a motorbike, so I started from zero, like everyone else. My neighbor bought his son a motorbike, and I liked it, so I decided to get my license. It worked out, and this is my second motorbike now.
The Steel Cobra's leather-clad leader says she still feels like an 18-year-old. The 55-year-old says she will likely continue to ride her bike around Russia for years to come.
Asian stocks have dropped following mixed U.S. earning reports. Stocks fell after the European Central Bank disappointed investors expecting an immediate easing. Japan's Nikkei 225 lost over 0.5%, while Shanghai's shares ticked down as well. But Shanghai recovered its losses later after sliding. South Korea's Kospi and Hong Kong's SSI both slipped almost 0.5% as well. Australia's ASX 200 is down marginally. The dollar is trading near 2-week high versus the yen as investors paid expectations for aggressive Federal Reserve rate cuts. The International Cricket Council has accredited a biomechanical lab at the Lahore University of Management Sciences in Pakistan. It has been approved by the ICC as a testing center for suspected illegal bowling actions. The lab is the first such facility in Pakistan. This is the 6th lab in the world accredited by the ICC, joining Brisbane, Chennai, Cardiff, Loughborough and Pretoria. ICC General Manager Geoff Allardyce congratulated Pakistan Cricket Board on getting the country's first such centre. The lab will also help the PCB to identify and fix illegal bowling actions along with biomechanical analysis of players. The PCB first planned to set up the lab in 2008, but in 2016, unable to open its own facility, the PCB allowed LUMS to use its equipment and set up a lab on its premises. In football, Manchester United beat Tottenham Hotspur 2-1 in the International Champions Cup trophy. Anthony Martial opened the scoreline for United in the 21st minute before Lucas Moura equalised the 65th. Angel Gomes then added another for United, which turned out to be the decider. America's Olivia Smolega has set a new national record in the women's 50 metres backstroke final. Smolega won the gold medal after finishing the race in 27.33 seconds. She has become the first American champion in the event since 2009. Defending champion Etienne Medeiros of Brazil finished second, followed by Russia's Daria Vaskina. Now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, with the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and analysis, keep watching Indus News.